Good day, everyone. Scooter coming to you live from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters here in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida. Today, we've got a little bit of maintenance work and a little bit of tidying up to do on this Marshall 2019 20-watt bass head. Haven't quite settled on the date for this bad boy yet, but if we zoom in here to our Spring 1971 catalog, Rose Morris catalog, you can see a picture of, that's probably a lead right there, but the bass looked the same from the front. And the model that we're looking at here today is this that's called the 20-watt bass setup number 2019. It was available as a complete setup only. It was not available as a separate head. It had the head with a 410 cabinet. So that's what we're looking at today. It's got a few minor interesting little problems and a few decisions that need to be made. Most of all, it's actually got some wiring that needs to be replaced. And we'll see what's going on there in just one second. Alright, here we are on the inside of this amplifier, this Marshall 2019 bass, JMP. It's a lovely little amplifier, and really these models sound excellent, particularly these days with the desire for smaller wattage amps. These things are really nice. They sound terrific. A couple of problems here that I'm going to address. First off, this cap right here is not original, and although orange drops are fine capacitors for all purposes, this particular one is in a pretty critical stage of the amplifier. It really it's going to sound harder to my ear with the orange drop in place. It would have originally had a little mustard cap like one of these here, though I don't have one available, unfortunately. I used to have some, but I don't anymore. This little Mojo Dijon is a wonderful substitute in these positions. It's going to give you almost identical sound to an old school mustard cap. I've A/B'd against these. I've A/B'd these Dijons against actual mustard caps and found them to be extremely close and behave very similarly. So this guy is going to go in there in place of that. Is it nitpicky? Yeah, it's a little nitpicky, but I think that orange drops sound better in Fenders than they do in Marshalls. They're widely used. They do sound very good. They're very reliable. They're very quiet, but they're kind of hard sounding. The mustard caps and the reproduction Mojo Dijons, they have a give to them that's distinctive of these amplifiers, and that kind of needs to be correct, so we're going to do that. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and you can probably see what I'm talking about before I even get there. A lot of this solid core cloth covered wire has had its cloth covering rot away over the years. Now, in a lot of cases inside here it's not such a big deal, but there's a couple of places where this wire is crossing over, and that's not good. And there's also a couple of places where it could contact other components. Here's a crossover right there. There's several places in this amp where that's a problem. Not sure what caused this cloth covering to rot away, but all of it is in jeopardy in here, so we really need to replace it. It's still making good connections everywhere, but it needs to be pulled out and replaced with new. I have some nice new solid core wire with an appropriate red cloth covering, which is similar to what would have been in the amp when it was new, and you know, I'm going to try and disturb as few solder joints as I possibly can. Most of these original solder joints, if you'll look closely, have the telltale nail lacquer, as the Brits call it, or nail polish, as we call it. You can see a solder joint that's been disturbed right there, and there's one right next to it. This resistor, part of the bias supply, has been replaced. This one has also been replaced. And another thing has been done here too, which I'm trying to decide, whoops, wrong direction. Trying to decide whether or not to leave. I think I will leave. In its stock form, the amp has a jumper right here between the bias cap and the bias resistor as part of the supply. Well, someone has jumpered that with these two wires that go off over here and through the chassis, and on the underside of that there is a potentiometer that has been, I think, hot glued to the chassis. It's okay work, not the way I would have done it. I would have probably just gotten a small trim pot and soldered it directly to the terminals, the way it might have had, well, never had in these amplifiers, because the power tubes are EL84s and you typically don't see or need that. So that was probably added by somebody along the line. It seems to be functioning okay, so I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it in place. If it becomes a problem later on when we power it up, I may yank that out and return it to its stock form. It's largely stock most everywhere. You can see all your stock resistors, these 100Ks, these here. We've got the mustard caps here in place. This is all stuff that would have come with the amplifier. This cap here, at first blush, might appear to not be correct, but the nail lacquer is in place, so that cap is correct and is original. So anyway, I'm going to try and disturb as few of these solder joints as I can. There are some of them, for instance this one right here, that's an original joint. It's going to have to be disturbed because I need to redo this particular wire that has the cloth covering rotted away. So not sure what caused that. Also down here, your diodes, your rectification diodes, those have definitely been replaced. Definitely not stock solder joints at some point. And as you can see up here, there's a little bit of residue, as if, you know, that this one here may have had what we call a non-passive failure. Anyway, that pretty much covers what I'm going to be doing in here. This wiring is going to be kind of slow, meticulous work. I'm going to have to be very careful. I'm going to have to cut my wires carefully, route them the same way, and hopefully we come out on the other end with a good result. Stay tuned. Alright, here we are. It's actually the next day. I put some red ink on each of my solder points that I redid for a couple of reasons. To keep track of all of them when troubleshooting, and also to alert any future technicians that work has been done and joints have been disturbed. But if we come down here, you can see this Dijon cap that I have placed in here in place of the orange drop that was there. And you can see my soldering here and here. And you can also see the brand new wire, cloth covered, solid core wire, that we've replaced the old wire with the rotting cotton insulation on it. And yeah, in my initial sound test yesterday, this thing just sounds absolutely stellar. If you've never plugged into one of these amps, all of the small Marshalls are excellent. All of the 18 and 20 watters are just a lot of fun. I've got an awful lot of affection for this particular design. It's very simple indeed. And I think as a result, it has a lot better sound than something that's a little more complicated. Doesn't even have tone controls on, or your normal tone. It has tone controls, but it doesn't have bass, treble, mid, any of that jazz. No tremolo, nothing else to speak of in terms of all of the stuff that you will find on other amplifiers, Marshalls and Fenders. Just a great sounding little amp. Kind of makes me want to build one, to be honest with you. And it doesn't hurt that this thing has really good tubes in it. Slight pause while I flip this over and we'll have a look at the tubes. Alright, flipped over here, you can see the other side of the chassis. One of these filter caps has been replaced. This one right here is not original. And also down here, if I can get my tripod to cooperate, this is the potentiometer that I mentioned earlier that's been added to control bias. Not sure why. It's set where it needs to be for these tubes, and it sounds good. I'm going to leave it in place. It's a fine quality part, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now, here is part of the heart of this thing. Now, with new old stock tubes, I'm not always a believer in all of the rigmarole surrounding new old stock tubes, particularly now that they've become so expensive. But I will definitely admit all day long that when you can install genuine, made in Great Britain, Mullard EL84s, you're going to have a leg up on any other EL84. I think JJ's come really close to these tubes, in my opinion, in most cases. But these guys are the gold standard, I think. Now, you'll notice that I've made markings on these tubes. And before you gasp in horror, that's done with a Sharpie oil-based paint marker. And it's very easy to remove, although quite durable. It will tolerate heat really well and stay in place nicely over time. It can be removed quite easily with a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol. So those are not permanent modifications to the tubes, just a way for me to keep track of them, and it can be removed very easily. You'll see here's V3 and V4. One of the other cool things in this amplifier, could these be original? Yeah, it's certainly possible. This amp is late 60s, early 70s. It's possible. They're very far off from one another. On my ICO 666, they're not what I would call a balanced pair. But where EL84s are concerned in an amp like this one, who really cares? Now you'll notice also down here, we have made in England Brimars in this amp for the two 12AX7s. And you can see here's V2, and I've done my ratings of the two triodes and dated it with the ICO 666. But it's just, look at this thing. It looks like the day that it was made. It's in absolutely fantastic condition. Could these be original? Yeah, they certainly could be. I don't know if they are. The amp has been worked on previously by somebody because the one filter cap's been replaced, and of course the modifications that were done. Let me find my keyway. There we go. So yeah, good glass. Hey, spend what you want to on the glass. If it makes you feel better to spend, $50, $60, $70 on a 12AX7 or, $300 on a pair of EL84s, and you think it sounds better, then it sounds better. In my opinion, probably not worth the money, but there is no doubt and no denying how this amplifier sounds, and you're going to hear it shortly. That's pretty much it for the innards of this little guy. Just kind of wanted to make it safe with that rotted wire inside there. And, the new owner is going to gig with it. He's going to play shows with it. He's going to go make money with it. So it needed to be made a little more safe with the wiring issues that existed. So let's plug it in, see what it sounds like, huh?
All right, here we are, everyone. You have no idea how hard it is to set up a shot. Where you get the amp and the guitar and everything all in the same shot. Anyway, I'm still new at this stuff. Here we have our good friend, the Marshall Model 2019 Bass 20. And man, it sounds good. It's just really a good sounding amp. It's a lot of fun. Really been enjoying it. Kind of thinking I might want to build one for myself. It's pretty cool. Guitar today is Munch, my Schecter 1982 Schecter Strat style guitar, maple neck, Clouson tuners, D'Addario strings, very old EMG pickups. And it's got an old version of the SPC mid booster right here in the bottom tone control, which we'll use to get some humbucking sounds out of the pickups. Master volume, master tone, Wilkinson bridge, aluminum pickguard, all sorts of fun stuff. So anyway, I'm plugged into the first channel. I've got the volume up around 8, and the tone is up around 8, and I'm plugged into number 1. I'm not going to bother jumpering channels and stuff today because, frankly, it just doesn't need it. It sounds so wonderful. But you could jumper these channels if you wanted to. Anyway. I should mention at this point that I'm plugged into my long-suffering Randall 212 cabinet that has Celestion 65-watt speakers in. There were a special limited run thing they did for a very short time. There's a label on the back that says what it is, but I can't get to it. But it's ugly as hell, but it sounds great. Anyway. Up to the SPC here in the bridge position, which will give us more of a humbuckery kind of a sound. And it figures I'm out of tune. Slight pause. All right. We're back again. Where were we? Yes, humbuckery sounds. Let's hit the volume more, see if we can get some more grind out of this thing. I'm going to peg it. great thing about this amp when it's pegged is that you can just turn down the volume on the guitar and clean it up. And then when you want to go for more crunch, you just turn up your volume. That's all just messing around with the controls off the guitar. It's one of those kind of amps that you kind of play the amp. That's the most fun thing about it, is you're playing the amplifier. That's when you have a lot more fun, I think, than just throwing. As much as I love pedals, and I do love pedals, it's kind of fun to have an amp you can just plug in and play and have a good time without doing any weird things with pedals if you're not feeling it. Anyway, I think that kind of wraps it up. The other channel sounds pretty much the same as that one does. Let's plug into it real quick. See what I just did there? I just turned the volume control up slightly to all the way from down about a notch and a half, and it's a nice means of expression. Great platform for pedals, though. I won't get into that today, but you can put pedals in front of it, and a clean boost in particular really works well in front of it because you're just pushing the front end of it harder. That's it. That's all for our good friend, the Marshall Model 2019 Bass 20 amplifier. Go find one. They're a lot of fun. If you have any other questions about anything we do here at Granville Guitars, seek us out on the web at www.granvilleguitars.com. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and also our blog over at WordPress, A View from the Granville Bench. Thanks very much. Thanks for tuning in. Have a rockin' good day.